sort of manipulate it, you know, sort of say like, wow, this is ripe, we could see this parcel, buy it for, you know, a low bid, and then kind of stretch the language right to the limit to put in something sort of undesirable next to adjoining properties.
I think the protection there is that there's actually two layers. First, they have to come to this board, who has to say, we like the idea. There's so much discretion that if the board feels that, no, that's not the right thing for that neighborhood, and a situation just like you said, if that comes up, they can say, that's just not appropriate here, and we're not even going to let you go to the next step of the planning board review.
Yeah, so, you know, if somebody has a project, they have to appeal to the town board, is what Mayor Lou was saying. They have to appeal to the town board that they're, what, you know, I identify this project, I'd like to do this with it, and these are my plan, they show the plans to the town board, and then we vote on it. So if it doesn't get approved from the town board, it wouldn't go to the planning board.
Right.
And then the next step would go to the planning board, and they would have to do the same thing that any other project would have to do, only they would be using that zoning when they go before the planning board.
Right. So it allows the opportunity for maybe to economically develop or get something more out of an idle property.
It's not just about idle, it's about properties that have limitations because of zoning, where nothing is happening because of zoning, and that's really what we're trying to address. Properties that you see that, you know, somehow zoning, you know, you remember that zoning, some zoning started, you know, based on where everything was, you know, they do a circle around things. We have a lot of hamlets in our town, we have a lot, so we have some crossroads in different hamlets that haven't, you know, some houses and properties and buildings that really don't fit the rest of the neighborhood. Maybe because of a store, or maybe because there might have been, you know, some kind of industrial work there. So you have some properties that don't really fit the neighborhood. So this gives a chance for that person that maybe owns that lot or that house or that building to come before the board and say, look, you know, I can't get anything done in this property that makes any sense because of the zoning limitations. I'd like to apply for this district.
Makes sense.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there was one follow-up. I was sort of interested in what the board, everybody might consider risks. Are there any risks?
I think there's always risk for anything. I mean, we just have to be diligent about any project that comes before us, that we dot our I's and cross our T's. You still have to do a seeker review, just like any other project. So they're going to be under the same review that you would for any other project. They have to meet seeker. So I think that protects us.
Right.
And the process calls for a public hearing.
A public hearing, just like, yeah.
So, you know, as the process moves forward, if it got past this board, then next would be the planning board, which most likely would have to order a public hearing.
Yeah.
Where,
you have two public
you know,
hearings.
certainly the affected residents or the residents in the immediate area would have an opportunity to weigh in their concerns. But, you know, obviously everybody in town would be able to weigh in on that public hearing.
And yeah, what you're having there is an opportunity for anybody, for the town board not to miss anything because you have those public hearings so the public can bring it to their attention.
On the other side too, I mean, we have properties, and I'll throw one as an example, Joe McCulloch, down by the Thruway in Bloomington, which I'm sure you see all the time. I mean, that, I'm sorry, I apologize. That, you know, by not allowing him to do anything with it, and it's just sitting there dormant, it's an eyesore. And also by allowing people to develop, it's going to increase the tax base, which is going to generate revenue into our budget, where we can spend money in other problems in other areas that we have in the town, but allowing these properties not to develop, to just become an eyesore. And obviously, let's face it, the maintenance factor, which is something that's going to be coming down the line here shortly, it becomes an eyesore for neighbors, the people, the public, and visitors that come into our town and see this. So I don't think anything is 100% like when you say, you know, is there any risk involved? I don't think there's anything in life you can say that there's not a risk in, but there is a lot of things that we've implemented between the town board, the planning board, to protect and make sure that it's done properly. And as the supervisor said, having a seeker review is going to really oversee the whole thing.
And we all know, anybody in this this room that lives in Rosendale that we have some properties that are, been a challenge, that have sat vacant for long periods of time and have become blights to their neighborhood, so we're trying to fix that. Anybody else have any comments? Yes, could you stand up and say your name?
Yeah. You mind if I come forward? Because
Love for you to come forward.
My name is Kathleen Wiacek. I live in Tilson. I apologize for my voice. I have not had time to really review it also very thoroughly. But I do take a little pause sometimes when I read something like under the regulations. It's number 3 regulations under the Roman numeral 4.
Which one?
Number 4. Would you like me to say that?
Under modifications you're talking about?
No, under regulations, it would be section 4, I think you're referring to, where it reads, "The planning board and/or the town board may grant the waiver of requirements pending a finding that the proposed development is in accord with the town's comprehensive plan and in concert with the character of the neighborhood."
Right. I just feel that that's a little subjective. I mean, I just I feel like that's a subjective wording. And just one other comment is, I'm not exactly sure how it would really work out, because I've never seen it done, and maybe you could give us further examples. But I'm wondering if you could explain how a business would be categorized, such as small, medium, and large, and/or what criteria would quantify that. So I'm thinking of a car lot takes up a lot of space, but it may not use a lot of water, and it may create a lot of traffic, as opposed to a laundromat, which I see is under the, laundromat / dry cleaner. So now we're talking toxic chemicals. So I just feel I need a lot more information, and I'm not comfortable with that wording where it would give the town board, would be subjective, where they could create a waiver.
I think that's kind of, as we just addressed Mr. Hughes, is that we have a lot of fail-safes here. We had the town board, we had the planning board, and you have to go through a seeker. So like in years ago, where things did occur, like you just mentioned, it's zero that it's going to happen moving forward, because it's being overseen by too many committees, and once again, the seeker review.
And I would like to take your word for it, but boards change. People come and go, and I just want to be careful, and I have not had a lot of time to review it, and I think maybe we need more time.
I just wanted to say, I'm not going to really comment now because it's the public hearing, but I have some comments. I understand, your concern, and we're going to discuss it more as a board, but really want to hear all of your views right now. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Kelly.
I'm Kelleigh McKenzie. I too have not had a lot of time to look at this. But I would just say my initial reaction is, first, I'm really excited and glad that the concept of an economic development overlay is being undertaken by the board, because I think it's a great thing to use for our town. But I'm concerned about the broad nature of this, and especially as being on the zoning board and really being in touch with what the typical rules are for a variance, like a use variance, changing a variance. I understand the need for creating an overlay so that you don't have to have that super high criteria, so that some of these properties that need redevelopment can get redeveloped. But I also feel that that really needs to be balanced with the expectations of property owners to have a certain kind of neighborhood. And the fail-safes that you mention in here are subjective in nature, very broad, and really do depend on the people that sit on these two boards. And one fix for this could be to limit this economic overlay to not be the entire town, but the Route 32 corridor, and then designated specific properties that we all know about, that are large, that need to be redeveloped, rather than having it be anywhere at any time. Because I fear for a lot of property owners being very disappointed in what's going to start happening in their neighborhood. And I understand that any economic development overlay that's approved by this amendment as currently written would be an amendment to town law and subject to the rules regarding amending town law, and any protestation of that approval would require 20% of the adjoining property owners to protest in writing. And I'm just wondering, some of these proposed changes would, or these uses, these permitted uses would affect more than just the people right on the property line. That could affect a whole neighborhood. So maybe a different kind of rule for that, in terms of if it's a kind of change that's going to affect the entire neighborhood, that the entire neighborhood would have a voice in it, more of a voice of protesting it. And the other thing, sorry, very quickly, one other thing. It says in the regulations and procedures, the town board reserves the right to consider or not consider any petition submitted under this article. And again, this speaks to the people on the board versus actual laws, because what if it's a use that just the people on the board don't think is a good idea? I mean, what is the criteria for even hearing an application? To have it be just at the discretion of the board, I find concerning. And maybe some of the, maybe a fail-safe is to have unanimous votes of the board and planning board when approving anything in this process. Maybe that would give a little bit more comfort to residents about how broad the language is. And I guess that's it. Thanks.
I'm just going to speak on a couple of things, then we ask Mary her opinion on the legal issue.
I have to look to see.
Yeah, because that's not, I don't know where you got that
It's
interpretation.
referred to right here in this code. It says, item B, 1B, application for approval shall be consistent with the procedures for zoning amendment outlined in Article 9 of this chapter, as well as the procedures required under the New York State. So Article 9 of this chapter in our town code includes, it's about amendment and protestation.
But this would be the amendment. This is the amendment, not each person that comes to you.
Article 9 of this chapter, oh no, not each person that comes to it.
Not each applicant, because once this is created, it's the law that would be under
It
those
changes the town code.
Yes,
any
that's
change
what
in town code.
This is the change to the town code, though. Right, Mary Lou? Not
Well,
the-
Well, no, every time
We
somebody
add
comes in and do it, that property, their zoning changes. So I'll have to look at 9 and compare them.
Okay.
Yeah, so every time an
Because
overlay.
I might want to amend that to say, only application procedures, it doesn't apply to appeals, that, appeals would go through the Article 78 procedures or something like that.
Right, okay.
But I'll compare those.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is that we did weigh the pros and cons of identifying the 32 corridor and specific properties, and that was discussed at length about whether to do it that way. And because of the seeker process, we would have to do seeker for every one of those locations as if they were applicants. So that's why we didn't do it that way. Okay, so this way, it's up to the applicant to bring it to us to handle seeker. We would have had to do seeker for every single one of those properties. So we didn't do it. That was the reason we didn't do it. But I think you weren't at some of the other meetings, but when I first brought this to the board's attention, we did identify some areas, and we were very specific about some of the properties we thought were good candidates for. And I think everybody agreed on which properties are good candidates. But we also didn't want to limit it, because there could be some changes where somebody leaves a location that maybe is in there for a long time, and people forget that that's not really a neighborhood use, that's, it's not really in the zone, because it's been that way for so long. Now it's a vacant, or it's trying to be sold, and now we can't reuse that building because it doesn't fit zoning. So we want to have that opportunity. And if you look around the town, you're going to see some places where that happens, where you might have a small commercial use, or you might have a building that could be, you know, maybe light industrial or something, and, you know, now it's being vacant, but it's not it's in an R1 and it doesn't have, you know, it's not a house, so what do you do with that? So that's why we want to have some flexibility on that. And,
That makes sense. I would encourage the board to consider having more than just a majority rule on some of these decisions though, because all this discretion that's being given to the planning board and the town board, if it could be 3/4,
Yeah.
well, some more than just majority vote, because there's large
I
areas
understand
of
what you're saying.
discretion.
I think that it gets to the point where, you know, this could just go on forever, and at some point you just have to bite the bullet and say, we have to take some action to give opportunities for some of these things to be corrected, and this is the action that I think is appropriate to do that. And we really couldn't find any way to not have some discretion in the board's decision without it becoming a whole nother zone that would not fit each one of those
I
properties.
understand.
So-
Would you be open to entertaining the idea of having more than requiring?
I'm
more
not gonna
than
make that
majority vote?
decision now, I'd rather discuss that with the
Yeah.
board, okay? But if you could, you understand that, we could say setbacks are gonna be this, and then you get a property and it's like, you know what? That's a 0 setback, now what do we do? You know, so you have that situation that's gonna happen, that none of those properties fit any zoning, and that's why we don't wanna have something very you know, concrete and cut and dry about what it is. And so. I'm sorry, anybody else?
I'm sorry, I forgot one other thing.
Sure.
I feel like, I mean, maybe it's because I'm on the zoning board and involved with these various things. I feel like this is such a substantial change to our town's code, because for property owners, it could have real impacts. I feel like more than just the bare minimum of public notice might be warranted to alert people that this is going on.
Remember that there's still going to be two other processes. This is just getting this approved for.
I'm talking about just this.
I
I'm not talking
understand.
about other processes in economic overlay applications, just
This is the
this.
process. I'm not gonna say that, because this is the process that we have to go through, so, you know, I'll,
No, but I was just gonna suggest maybe flyers for hold the public hearing open one more month and maybe do flyers, maybe let some of the major associations and organizations in town know, because I think largely property owners maybe don't know about this.
and I'm gonna keep it open for written comments anyway. Rita, did you have a question? I see you leading through the book.
Yeah, there was something that I saw, and I'm now looking to see which section and letter it is. When I read it online, I didn't print it. About the town board deciding whether to waive the density requirements and changing it, and I was wondering what, but now I'm having a hard time finding the exact.
It's the bonuses for open space.
Now, that was added on because, you know, you have,
It wasn't in the good stuff about percentages. There was a statement that it does look good, you know, but there was a statement just standalone. That's it. Yes, section D, part 1A, development densities, yard requirements and retention of available open space shall be at the discretion of the planning board during site review. And I'm wondering what the, you know, what the backup is on that. I have a similar feeling, I think, that's already been said. I have a very,
page that is.
it's the last page in this particular group, section D, design requirements, bulk and use table. And it's that statement that the retention of open space and density will be at the discretion of the planning board. And I'm just, I echo something that I think I'm hearing here, which is I have a good feeling about our current makeup of our board and our current makeup of our committees and planning boards, et cetera, but those things, as was pointed out, that can change, and they can change dramatically. And that particular statement gives me concern, that the density and open space and all of that would be at the discretion of that board. I don't know what's the fail-safe on that, what's the,
Well, people you want to encourage that, so I don't know why you write that.
I want to encourage what?
You want to encourage open space and
Exactly,
use
yes.
density for open space.
But this saying that the density and the retention of open space is at the discretion of the planning board, that goes either way.
Because you might have a property that already is pre-existing conditions, and so you can't put that restriction on them. How would it have to be a discretionary decision, because you don't know what property is gonna come before you. So if it has no open space, what if it's a piece of property on Main Street, or what if it has no open space? So you can't
Okay.
have something, you have to be able to look at each lot and figure out what is appropriate for that property.
Okay.
That's the reason that's not in there. It's gotta be a discretionary decision because of that.
And this is seen as the only vehicle for making usable properties that would otherwise be unusable.
The only other option is to spot zone, increase zoning on certain lots that don't fit, and that would be against the law.
Yeah, we can't do that with anything.
So, I can't think of another.
Just gives me pause, not with the current complexion of our town government. I actually think we have a really great town government, but,
Well, some of these properties have been vacant for 20 years, and nothing's been, so, you can wait and wait and wait until you see, if you can, this is an opportunity for us to try to get some action taken and try to get some of these things corrected, and then they'll be behind us, they'll be done. That's the hope, that we get that, And I think, having public hearings both at the town board level and the planning board level gives everybody an opportunity to come on several occasions to really make comments and give input to both the town board and the planning board on the things that they're concerned about. And that's the process that we have in place, and that's what we're trying to do, is work with the process we have. And this is the only option that we have to try to get some of these properties that don't fit zoning to get redeveloped.
I do like the idea of possibly some unanimity being required of the board, or perhaps a supermajority as opposed to a bare majority. As another fail-safe, there have been communities that have been really affected very quickly by an influx of people coming in wanting to do a certain thing. And I don't want to, demonize any group or any set of people, but I'm concerned about the future. I want to make sure our stuff is tight enough that we're not incredibly vulnerable.
I totally understand what you're saying, we don't want to see that either, but I think that I'm more concerned right now as the present condition. Right now, the present condition is not good. We've got some properties that need attention, and so I'm trying to address the present condition. And, there's gonna have to, obviously, we'll be reviewing this to see if comments, we'll talk to our attorney, we'll talk to our planner, and see if, and the board will, discuss some of the comments people have made, but, I think generally this is a good way to go, and, there might be a little tweaking, but we'll have to discuss that.
I can tell you there's some typos in there anyways.
When you play with something, sometimes you go back and forth with it, and you'll a few things in there that were.
There's some threes that are supposed to be Cs.
Yes.
Could you?
Could you state your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Edward Kurtz, and I'm just wondering, could you give us some examples of the problem properties that you're
Yes, I
talking
can,
about?
We're sitting in one right now. We have a very large piece of property that is in a residential area, but it is not zoned for commercial use. We're gonna be using a good portion of the property for two municipalities to occupy, but we're gonna have about a third of it that we'd like to see encourage commercial use of some kind. Get someone else in here, and we'd have to say that, right now, it's not really an issue because it's still owned by the school, but eventually when the municipalities own it, it will be an issue. Tilson School is one. The building across from Sitco and 32 is one. As Councilman Ryan mentioned before, the property on the corner of 32 and the Thruway is another. Fans Plaza, Fans Plaza, you got a half a building that's been sitting there vacant for a long, long time, and they can't figure out how to reuse that space, and we might be able to encourage mixed use in that property that will maybe be able to.
Isn't there already a process in place through the zoning board or the zoning board of appeals?
To get a variance, you're saying?
Yeah.
There is the ZBA process, but it's a very, very difficult process.
You have
Well,
to
what
meet-
is the argument for permitting the town board to take over that decision-making that's already.
It's not exactly that, but one of the things that happens with zoning is you can't go into a property with, and create your own situation. So if you bought a property, and you just plan on developing it, and you want to go to the zoning board for a variance, you can't get that variance if you bought it knowing it's not, you've already undone the possibility.
Self-created hardship.
You created a self-created hardship. It's not legal to do that, so that's where zoning boards have a hard time with that. So this is creating something that gives the town board and the planning board opportunities to, it's you're creating another zone is what you're doing. So.
The other thing in here is that the pendulum swings the other way. Now, one building in particular exceeded 20 years. Matter of fact, it exceeded 30 years of being dormant. And now, with how strict the state is in environmental DEC, by having these buildings dormant now, it creates a health issue. Now it becomes a health issue with animals, you have burglary, you have people going in and living in these places. And I'm going to tell you, my phone rings an awful lot on residents' homes that end up in corporations that aren't doing anything except they go out, cut the grass once a month, and then tarp the roof. So without us addressing it, the next thing we're going to have to answer to is the health department.
Don't you already have the power to condemn a building like that that's vacant for 30 years?
No, matter of fact, that's going to be
the other code.
that's going to be coming down the road. We discussed that about a year and a half ago, and that's going to be coming down the road as far as maintenance.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that.
Right, that's a separate thing.
Different thing, but yeah.
But this, to compile this, I mean, read the paper, look at what's going on in Bloomingburg, look what's going on in Woodburn, that area. I mean, I feel the residents of this town we're very, very fortunate with the opportunities that we have and that we're moving forward. And once again, the tax base is going to help us out. And I really can't believe that anybody would allow anything to be done that is against the law or harmful to our families, our kids, our community. I mean, there might be people out there, but I know I'm not one of them. I'm excluded from that. So we're just trying to be able to move forward to do something with these dormant properties. That's pretty much, end of it. Because unfortunately, Kelly was asking, you know what I want to ask Kelly? Is there any towns in the state or anywhere where they require 100% vote to pass something? That was kind of new to me. I never heard of a unanimous decision from a town board in order to move forward. It's always been majority to me.
There are super majorities.
There are? Okay.
Super majority for certain things,
Right.
but.
60%.
Okay.
But
I just never heard of it. But anyway, to move forward on this,
Yeah, let's just see if anybody else has a comment. Jack?
Jack Snyder, on these buildings that you're going to adjust and give the right to do what you feel is justified, I understand that, and I'll go along with that fine. But do you have control, or can you control, once that person establishes that piece of property, and let's say he's going to make it a restaurant, and now he decides to have an outside band with microphones and magnifiers and everything else, can we control this? Because you give him the right to have a restaurant. But can you control what he can do once he opens the doors?
Well, let me, we could address that. At a planning board can have conditional approvals. You can have approvals for certain things. And if it's about a band or noise, that's a noise ordinance issue. That's a different,
Right, but
area that
according to our noise ordinance right now, there doesn't seem to be a problem with the people who are making the noise. But the people on the other side who are listening to it have a problem. And we'd like to see an adjustment made to the ordinance with that considered.
Yeah, well,
this is kind of out of the realm of.
yeah, I mean, that's not, you're talking about properties that are they're in the district.
I'm talking about any property. You
Yeah.
take the Tilson School and say it's okay to make this a hotel and a restaurant, and they decide to have on Saturday nights that they're going to have a big band come in with microphones on the outside that everybody in the neighborhood has to put up with.
Well,
But you give them the okay to make it a restaurant or a hotel, so that's what I'm saying. How much of it can you control?
When you have your public hearing, people that live in that neighborhood would have to come to the planning board or the town board and say, we don't wanna see that kind of a business or that kind of a, you know, use here because it's gonna be disturbing, you know, to the neighborhood. That would be,
But you're doing away with a business that would justify the town making an income, but have control over how much you can do with it, is what I'm trying to say.
And Jack, I think that goes back to what Jean said earlier, that if the process made it to the planning board stage, that the planning board should take a look at that, and obviously there would be another good public hearing. If those concerns came out, the planning board could then put conditions on the development, such as no outdoor music or things like that, because of the location perhaps, you know, in a densely populated area.
we're not saying that's the case, but we're saying
Right.
as an example,
Right.
that could be, that, you know, you're using an example, we're saying there is some discretion there that the planning board has the authority to say that.
No, there is a noise ordinance, right, 7 AM to 10 PM.
I know, but what annoys me is the fact is that
No, it just says.
you and I are sitting right here talking. I don't need a microphone for you to hear me.
I know.
Why do I need a microphone for somebody who's having a backyard party down on Main Street that I can hear up in Tilson?
Exactly, you hit the nail on the head. You brought this up before, and this is not really for the public hearing. I know where you're going with this.
Well, I'm just saying, if you're trying to justify certain buildings, to be adequate to do something to control the whole thing.
And the general point is relevant in that, you know, we're talking about having a floating zone, and that means it could float in a residential district. So, you know, you can have uses that are not residential that can, you know, have impacts on the residences around them. And so, you know, I think in that is a valid point. That is one thing to really consider in looking at this zone.
It is definitely something to consider. But, you know, that's why, you know, the way that it's gonna, the process would happen is that we would look at what is the use that they're saying they wanna do, and is it appropriate for that location? So that's how we would look at it. We'd be asking those questions, and we'd be asking the public those questions too. Yes, Rita?
Just, something in support of some of this, I, in an old-fashioned kind of way, support some mixed use. I mean, Main Street has a history of mixed use in the sense of the kind of facility where mom and pop could live over top of the store. And I think that we don't need to be terrified of any and all mixed use, because it could lead to, I don't know, a CVS suddenly popping up in our backyard. But I do think we have to be careful about that. I
Always the case with
respect,
everything we do.
I respect that. Most of the hamlets have what was historically a little bit of a business district, and in many of them, it's gone. It's gone.
And I think that's why when they put the application in, and it goes to public hearing and looked at, it will be analyzed, and at that point, a report will be done for each property that submits an application, so it can be outlined and fine-tuned on a one-on-one basis for each property owner that presents their case to an application to the town board and the planning board. It can be then, you know, looked at under a microscope, and all the specifics can be put in on a case-to-case basis. I agree with you.
You can have a site plan you can look at.
Again, as always, this just, once again, puts us at the discretion of.
That's why we're elected to help make those decisions for the public, you know, and that's part of our job.
There's also, under the purpose and objectives, the intent is that this would be aligned with the town's comprehensive plan and Route 32 design guidelines. And that was a public process. It had public input, it had professional input. And then this public hearing is another way to get additional input so that, yeah, as elected officials, we can make the right decisions. But it's not arbitrary. And it's also, I also want to say I'm just glad to hear people's concerns, pro and con, and that's something else that we can bring to bear on.
Yes.
I have a question about permitted uses.
You could just state your name.
Oh, Fre Atlast. Under permitted uses, on section C, the industrial land use category, I have two questions. One is, it's the manufacture of food and kindred products, and then it says, all right,
You need to tell us a little bit about.
okay, it's permitted uses number 4,
Section 3.
And then section C, number 4.
Okay.
Now, it says, except meat products. Is that it, or is it except meat products, pickles, sauerkraut, vinegar pickles? Is all that not permitted use?
Correct.
Wet corn milling. Okay, so we already have a manufacturer of pickles on Main Street.
He's in a business district, though, I mean, you know, it's a different,
So this is for,
This is for this floating zone.
this is for the floating zone. So you couldn't make,
well, we don't wanna make something, like, let's say you wanted to put something somewhere where it's in a neighborhood, but it's a small, light industrial, but it might still have some odor or something like that, so you gotta have those things.
that's what I was wondering, what the criteria was.
You know, it might be appropriate in some, you know, in this one, this is permitted uses for, which one is this?
Industrial.
Industrial,
Right.
Yeah.
but, you know,
So is it basically the smell from the industrial use is why it's not permitted?
are you saying that you think they should be included?
No, I'm just trying to get clarification in looking at it, because then above that,
But she's saying the way it says except meat products.
I was just trying to clarify that, were pickles allowed or not allowed? Because it
It's
just
not-
said except
we're
meat
not-
products.
we're not- I think
So
it's-
all of those things like,
No, I think it's just except meat products, isn't it, Mary Lou, the way it's written?
that's
It's
what I'm
not
trying to
confusing.
figure out.
We'll
So
have to ask Dave what he
Yeah,
meant.
I think it's just the
It's
meat
whatever
products.
you
No,
guys do.
it's everything.
everything.
it's
In that
all-
category.
It's everything after
Punctuation
there,
there.
but these are different SIC codes that
Yes,
are
yes,
associated
yes,
with these
yes.
different
Yeah, I would think all those things
permitted
are
uses.
They're excluded,
Excluded.
except the manufacture of food and kindred products, which could be a bakery or things along that line, which wouldn't be offensive to
Right, but
most
it's not
people.
I'd like to see
However,
gas
when you get
stations
into,
excluded.
Right.
get into,
I'd like to see gas stations excluded, obviously.
You gotta get rid of the sauerkraut.
well, that's,
That's definitely.
You know-
sauerkraut's gotta
well,
go.
not in the village, but, you know, there's potential, you gotta be careful with that, because this is still America. You know what I'm saying?
We can have that, are we ready to have our town board discussion?
Well, I'm gonna see if there's,
I was in the middle of a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so the reason, I wanted clarification, and now I can't find where I am anymore.
Four, safe.
Page 6, right? Okay. Under permitted uses is also non-metallic mining and non-fuel mining. So by approving this as it is, then anybody can come in. Does that mean they can mine water, minerals, and, you know, going forward, you can't make sauerkraut out there, but you can dig up and take the minerals out. To me, it's like, I would be more encouraged by really protecting our water resources, our mineral resources, and having that as an allowable use as an industrial overlay concerns me. That's just my feedback.
Hi, my name is Lisa Jerkowski, and I was part of the Concerned Tilson group that stopped the original sale at Tilson School because we didn't feel it was going in a great way for our community. And by the grace of God, we got another bidder and someone that bought the building. And this sounds great, and I hope we can all work together. I hate to see Tilson School empty with the building going down with, I mean, I hope that we can do something with it. And I live in Tilson, so I'm right there. And I just think this is a great idea. I only just started reading it today, and I'm sure everyone has all their questions, and I hope they can be addressed. But I just wanted to say, I hope we can do something with that school.
Thank you. The only other thing I will say, you know, people have mentioned repeatedly they've only just started to look at, I will leave the public hearing open for written comments only for, you know,
I would say to the next.
maybe to the next one.
Yeah, I think a little bit, you're still waiting for the Ulster County Planning Board
Actually,
comments.
I think it might have gotten to Ulster County, but we didn't get to the town.
The only thing I received back from them was paperwork to hand in the final results.
Oh, they didn't send you the, okay.
They're meeting, they meet now.
Yeah,
They're also the first time they meeting.
All right, so let's,
And our planning boards, I mean, maybe after those comments come in, they could be posted so people.
so
can
we'll
read them.
say
The end
for
of the
the
month?
first, no, I would say the first.
Or like
meeting.
November 1st or something,
Yeah,
if you want
the end
some
of the
time
month.
to look at them before.
Yeah, so, just so you know,
You
at the
guys
end of
can-
at the end of the public hearing, we will leave it open until November 1st, so people have more time to write something in if they want, and that gives you a little more time to look it over. And that way, we can also review those comments to see if any modifications need to be made.
Maybe we could refer to the ZBA, the zoning board of appeals, to an environmental commission and take a look.
I see no reason for it to go to the zoning board. I think it needs to go to the planning board, it needs to go to the county planning board. Any zoning board member or environmental commission member can look at it and make a comment, but what would be the purpose of that? It's not part of the process.
Well, the environmental commission, just because they advise on natural resource use in the town, so, pretty pertinent.
I just feel like we start setting a precedent every time we do that,
Yeah,
it gets
that-
more and more
that is another
complicated.
precedent.
I think they can make comments,
Absolutely.
but I'm not
They
gonna
should.
refer it to them. They wanna make comments, and more than welcome to. But I don't wanna start that as being part of our precedent-setting process that we do. That's not typically our process. Rita?
I just want to ask a question triggered by Fre's comments, and that is, what type of mining was envisioned as possible? I understood non-metallic and non-fuel.
It's listed here as a non-metallic, non-fuel mining.
Right, so what would that be? What would that be?
Off the top of my head, I would say
Rock.
it could be rock, stone, shale,
Mm-hmm.
sand,
Yeah.
you know.
With that comes like for all other issues, I mean, that becomes an entire, that's why I think when you were mentioning maybe it should go to an environmental review process for something like that, especially where it might not be in an industrial use, I mean, where we normally have environmental reviews as is, it might need extra if it's in a residential area.
And that's why I think our environmental commissioners should weigh in. They should make themselves,
They can still.
they should make themselves very familiar with this document and submit, or their appropriate comments. Absolutely, that's what they're doing.
I definitely agree with that, but maybe it should be a requirement that they do weigh in, instead of just giving them the option.
But Mary Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, this process that we're going through right now is a state mandated process, and it doesn't necessarily involve those other groups as far as.
It's statement and also how, like the,
Right.
refer to the town planning board is from our code. Our code does not require anything other than the town
We're
planning
following
board and the
code.
Ulster County planning.
It's up to us.
But we don't need the mining provision in order to make the rest of this thing fly. I mean, we could pull that out and document it.
The town board can make a decision.
Right?
That's the whole idea of, getting the feedback.
Yeah, because I think that might be a big enough issue to be a separate issue, honestly.
Well, that's why we have a public hearing, and there might be
Yeah.
something that someone in the public brings to our attention that we didn't think of, and that's part of it.
And again, everything here is subject to revision, and I think that this document was put together, with a lot of different options for the board to look at, things that could possibly be considered under this law. And certainly, some of the things that we've talked about tonight, they're not pertinent for our town, nor should they be.
Right.
And that's the reason we have the feedback from the public, and, we have to do our due diligence to sort through that, and then, come back to the public with a final draft, if you will, if we get to that point, to say, this is what we're proposing, and still, I would believe that this board would be receptive to comment beyond that. Because this is a very, as Kelly pointed out, Kelly wants to answer the question. This is a major change to section 75 of our code. And the original intention, I believe, is to do good for the town, to make this a tool that we can work with to enhance our town and expand the tax base. But at the same time, this board has an obligation to look at what's good for the town, both environmentally and for health reasons, aesthetically. So, this is going to be a slow process, but it's a process that's well worth going through, because I think the end result is going to give us a lot more flexibility to make our town better than it is right now. And we've made strides each and every year. Everybody knows that. That's why you're here. That's why this room is filled up, because everybody cares about this town. So, I think your comments are appreciated and well warranted.
And I'm gonna just say that I'm not gonna make it an official request, but, Chris can talk to members of the, Environmental Commission to remind them that this is on the table right now to look at and see whether they wanna make comments, they can make comments just like anybody else does.
I think Kelleigh's an example here tonight, a member of our ZBA that took the time to educate herself on what's proposed and came here with some really good questions and suggestions. And, as a councilman, I expect the very same from our environmental commissioners. Not a, I'll leave it at that.
Yes, Kelly?
Yeah, just one comment. If you are going to be taking these comments into account and the planning board and other individual members of bodies to come up with another draft, maybe a final draft or a semi-final draft, I encourage you to hold the public hearing open again till the next town board meeting for people in the community to have a chance to review the next draft and come back and give one more round of comments. Because I think a lot of people in the community haven't even seen the first draft.
Well, you have to have another hearing if there's some significant changes to it.
If there's significant changes, we have to have another public, but
even if there
but
aren't.
if we make changes based on the comments, that's.
So based on the comments,
We don't have
that's what
to.
it's about, you don't have to.
Oh, you don't have to
No,
have a
only
hearing?
if they're based on the comments that we've
Right,
got.
that's
We make
why you
change
make the
based on
change.
comments.
That's why you have the public hearing.
Yeah.
I think, I want to just reiterate once again, by passing this or allowing this, if this does happen, all that this is allows the people that have these properties that have been designated to now put in an application on a one-on-one basis, and at that point, it would be all scrutinized by the people, the public, and our different committees. So by approving this to allow some opening to move forward on these dormant buildings, that's all it's doing. But now it's going to be a case by case. Kelly, you will be taking part, the community will, and all our, our planning board to scrutinize every little thing in here to apply it to that property.
I understand that, Bob, but this is setting the ground rules for all of the ongoing review of all of the applications going forward. So these ground rules are really, really important. And I feel like, if I didn't know about this, and then the change happened, and then I found out about it when the first application for someone next door to me came about, I would be really upset as a property owner that I didn't know that a change of this magnitude had happened to our
Yeah, but
town.
Kelly, there's no guarantee we could keep the public hearing open.
No, this is one more, this is the first
No,
one.
you're using the argument by leaving it open over and over, we're gonna hit everybody in town, and they're not gonna have that, we're not gonna have that situation. I could leave it open one more, and that could still happen when somebody wasn't aware, because if you're not paying attention, that's what's gonna happen.
But a lot more people would be aware with at least two open public hearings.
Okay, this is the
I will leave
thing.
it open for, let me just say, I will leave it open for written comment. I'm not gonna set that precedent. People will have the opportunity for almost a month now. We're gonna have a month's worth of time for people to review this and to ask questions about it and put in comments. We're not gonna have another public hearing unless we make substantial changes that are not related to the comments.
I'd like to say, and the other thing that you don't see or nobody else sees, we have a property owner, I won't mention his or her name. The property's been idle for 6, 7, 8 years now. Calls me up, cursing and swearing, when are you gonna move so I can do something with it because I'm stuck in neutral? That's the part you don't hear about.
What do they
So,
want to do?
excuse me?
What do they want to do?
What do you
They
mean?
just wanna do something.
They wanna do something when you can't do nothing, Ron.
Where?
Yeah.
I'm speaking very generically, I'd like to know where.
Well, Ron, does it matter? I'm pointing out a time frame and
And
the
I'm
person's.
pointing out a specific.
Well,
have a person
if
call
you let me
up.
finish, Ron, he
Well,
pays
I'm asking a
taxes
question.
on this
I wanna
property.
Quiet, quiet! Not putting up with that. You wanna have a
I'm
discussion?
asking a question.
Ron,
You have a customer,
Be respectful,
a
okay?
resident that calls, wants to do something, the public is
Ron,
entitled to know.
you of all people in the main
Don't
street of
start that. Don't
Rosendale,
start that, Bob.
I get a lot of phone calls from you too, so don't start shuffling your muscles to
I'm
me.
not shuffling any muscles. I want
Matter
to
of
know
fact, one of your
what
best
property
friends was
is-
calling me with complaints about you, so I'm gonna end it right here with you.
That doesn't answer the
Well,
question.
that's all.
calm down,
Take a
everyone.
deep
No.
breath.
That doesn't answer the question.
He doesn't have to tell you who, he
Of
wants.
course you don't have to. I'm
No,
just
listen,
asking a
listen,
simple
if
question.
somebody calls him and talks to him confidentially about something, he doesn't have to say who it was, okay? So we've named a couple of properties that we think are concerned. And you weren't here at the time of that, when that was discussed, okay? So let's just go
Thank you for
forward.
being so kind in your response.
No problem.
Rita?
On another note, I think that the idea of honestly having another public hearing on the final draft of this document is a good idea, whatever that final draft might be, just saying.
I'll take it into consideration, I'm not making that promise at this point.
Thank
We
you.
will discuss it with, our attorney about whether it's appropriate to do that. I mean, I think typically we do a public hearing, we leave it open for a week for written comments, and we're leaving it open for a month, which is a lot of extra time for people to have time to look it over. And, they can, the planning board's gonna be looking at it, they can attend planning board meeting to see what their comments are, so, they have time to review it. Jack?
I don't know how the rules are laid out right now, but if you okay something, is there a system where you notify the immediate people in the area of what's gonna happen?
When there's an application before the board,
No, I mean, I put an application in to do something, but
yes,
do you notify my neighbors
absolutely.
that I'm gonna be
registered
involved in
Absolutely,
something?
yes.
So personally, that,
Within, what is it?
Within 250,
I think it's 500.
I think it's 500.
500 feet.
that's
500
already in
feet.
process right now.
That's the process now,
Oh.
500 feet.
Yeah.
what?
In writing.
In writing, yeah, you
You
get a
get a
letter.
Registered mail.
Yep. That's always been the process. Yes,
I'd like to suggest that instead of, you go further than having another meeting and consider the possibility of having a referendum.
I'm fine. We'll discuss it, the board will discuss it.
Do submitted comments have the same kind of, they
Absolutely.
get the same review?
Yeah.
And in the past, we've sent them in, can we do email also? Is it,
Yeah.
you can just email
Yes, you can email
Yeah.
to town
And they
clerk.
should go
to
to
Mandy?
Yes.
rosendaletownclerk@yahoo.com. Did I get it right?
And that's the one that's the link that's on the web page?
No, it's
Is it?
on her page, on her page.
No, it's on the web, on our town page, my email.
Yeah, on your page for your department.
But it-
Page on the
yeah.
town
On the
website.
clerk's
Yeah, but
page,
it's also,
yeah.
I think it, well,
Right
now
here
it's
on
just
the
a
side.
phone
No,
number.
because the other one is in the
Yeah,
town.
yeah. Or you can call me, and then I can give it to you.
Is any, yes,
Jim Walker, Little Main Street. Just want to say, generally approve of the idea of mixed use, which Rita mentioned. There were a couple of things in the law